Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. This is Murli from the Michigan Satsang. Today we have two readings, one by Saroja from Letters from Sri Ramanashramam and the other by Akshay from Happiness and Art of Being. Thank you.
Letters from Sri Ramanashramam 70. Swami is everywhere. The Europeans whom you sent with a letter of introduction came here by car day before yesterday. An American lady also came with them. Yesterday morning, they went around the town and after visiting Skandashramam, reached the ashramam by midday. After making all arrangements for the return journey, they came into the hall at 3 p.m. and sat down. Unaccustomed to squatting on the floor, the poor American lady somehow managed to sit by my side but stretched out her legs towards Bhagavan's sofa. I myself felt it unmannerly but kept quiet as she was to go away presently. One of the attendants, Rajagopala Iyer, could not, however, put up with it and so respectfully suggested to her to sit criss-cross-legged. Bhagavan saw that and said smilingly, "When they find it difficult even to sit down on the floor, should you force them to sit cross-legged also?" No, as they do not know that it is disrespectful to stretch their legs towards Bhagavan, I merely told them so. That's all, said the devotee. Oh, is that so? It is disrespectful, is it? Then it is disrespectful for me to stretch my legs towards them? What you say applies to me as well. Saying that, in a lighter vein, Bhagavan sat up, cross-legged. All of us laughed, but we felt a bit troubled in our minds. Those foreigners stayed there for about half an hour and then went away, taking leave of Bhagavan. Bhagavan spent the whole of yesterday stretching out his legs from time to time and then folding them, saying that it might be deemed disrespectful. His legs get stiff in 10 minutes if he folds them, and the stiffness will not disappear unless the legs are stretched out for at least half an hour afterwards, not to speak of the pain that results. This afternoon, when I went into the hall, there was not more than 2 or 3 persons there. Bhagavan began stretching his legs, saying, "I do not know if I can stretch them. They say it is not good manners." Poor Rajagopala Iyer was standing there crestfallen and with a repentant look. Bhagavan is, after all, full of compassion. He stretched out his legs as usual. We felt happy. Looking at me seated in the hall, he began telling us the story of Avayar. Seeing that Sundaramurti was going away on a white elephant which had come from Kailas, the Raja of Chera whispered in the ear of his horse the Panchakshari mantra and got upon it to go to Kailash. Avayar, who was at that time doing puja to Lord Ganesha, saw them both going to Kailash and so tried to hurry up her puja as she too wanted to go to Kailash. Seeing that, Ganesha said, "Old woman, don't hurry. Let your puja be performed as usual. I shall take you to Kailash before they reach it." Accordingly, the puja was performed in due course. Waving his hand around, he said, "Old lady, close your eyes." That was all. When she opened her eyes, she found herself seated in Kailash in front of Parvati and Parameshwara. By the time Sundaramurti and Chararaja reached the place, they found her already seated there. Surprised at that, they asked her how she had gotten there. She told them how Ganesha helped her. They were overjoyed to hear how her bhakti was rewarded ultimately. She was very old and so she sat opposite to Parameshwar with her legs stretched out like me. Parvati could not bear that sight. She was worried because to sit with legs thus stretched towards Swami, she felt, was a great insult. She respectfully suggested to Parameshwara that she should be permitted to tell the old lady about it. "Oh, don't speak, don't open your mouth. We should not say anything to her," said Ishvara. "Even so, is not Parvati his better half? How could she put up with that insult? She therefore whispered into the ear of her maid to tell the old lady about it. That woman approached the old lady and said, "Grandma, grandma, don't keep your legs outstretched towards Ishvara." "Is that so? Tell me which side Ishvara is not present." "Shall I turn this side?" said Avayar. So saying, she turned her outstretched legs to the other side when Ishvara got turned that side. And when again she turned into a different side, he also got turned the same side. Thus Swami got turned to whichever side she turned her legs. Looking at Parvati, Ishvara said, "Do you see now? You would not listen to me. See how she turns me this side and that. That is why I told you not to open your mouth." Then Parvati requested the old lady to excuse her. It is similar to when people were asked not to stretch their legs towards Swami. Where is he not present? That devotee then said, "There is similar incident in the story of Namdev, is it not?" "Yes, that is so," said Bhagavan, and began relating that story thus. Namdev used to pride himself on the fact that Vitthal was always more fond of him than others, and so once Jnandev and others took him to a house of Gorakumbar for a feast. After food, all of them sat in the row, and during conversation, one of them said in a allegorical manner to Gorakumbar, You used to make you are used to making good pots, aren't you? Now tell us which amongst these pots are good and which are bad." Gorakumbar thereupon took a potter's testing rod and began hitting them on the head one by one. They all kept quiet out of regard for him and just kept their heads bent. When it came to the turn of Namdev, he expressed his resentment at the procedure and refused to undergo the test. Kumbar forthwith declared that that was an immature pot. All the others burst into laughter at that. Poor Namdev could not contain his anger. He began saying that they all had conspired together to humiliate him thus, and went to Vittal with tears in his eyes to complain. "Well, what is the matter?" asked Swami. And Namdev related the whole story. "That's all right, but tell me, what did others say when they were tested?" asked Swami. Namdev said, "They all shut their mouths and bowed when tested with the rod." Vittal: "And you?" Namdev: "Am I like them? How intimate I am with you. Am I to be beaten like that for the test?" Vittal: "This is called ahankara. All of them knew my real self and had a contented mind. You are not so." Namdev: "But you are kind to me, and what more is there for me to know?" Vittal: "That is not it. You must serve elders if you want to know the truth. What am I? If you dance, I dance. If you laugh, I laugh. If you jump, I jump. If you find the truth, you will not have these jumpings and bumpings." Namdev: "You say elders. Who is there older than you?" Vittal: "Who? There is a temple in the nearby forest. In that temple, there is a sadhu. Go to him and you will realize the truth." When Namdev went to that temple in the forest, he saw an unkempt man lying there. How could this man be a sadhu, he thought. And when he went closer to that person, he found the legs of the man on a linga. Shuddering at the sight, he said with trepidation, "Sir, what is this? You're putting your legs on the head of the god?" That man said, "Oh, Nama, is that you? Vittal sent you, didn't he?" Taken aback at this and wondering how the sadhu could know about him, he asked him again, "Sir, are you the sadhu? How could you put your legs on a linga?" "Is that so, my dear son? I don't know all that. I am unable to lift my legs. Will you please lift them for me and move them away from the linga?" He said. Namdev, agreeing to do so, lifted them and tried to put them elsewhere, but found that there was another linga there also. Thus, wherever he tried to put the legs, he found the linga there. So finally, he placed them on himself, and when he himself became a linga. That is to say, by the touch of those holy feet, he had Jnanodaya. Namdev stood up dazed. The sadhu said, "Yes, do you now realize?" Saying, "Yes, I have realized," he bowed before Visobakasar, disciple of Jnaneshwar, went home, sat in his room, and got immersed in dhyana and stopped going to Vittal. After some days, Vittal came there running and asked him, "Nama, how is it you haven't been coming to me of late?" When Namdev said, "O Prabhu, where is the place in which you are not present? I see you are here all times. I am you and you are me. That is why I do not go to you." "Oh, see, that is good." So saying, Vittal vanished. Bhagavan concluded the story and simultaneously released the legs that were kept crossed. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.
Happiness and the Art of Being. An introduction to the philosophy and practice of the spiritual teachings of Bhagavan Sri Ramana by Michael James. What is true knowledge? Though the absolute reality is given many names and descriptions such as God, Allah, Brahman, the Absolute, the Eternal, the Infinite, the fullness of being, Purna, or the whole, pure knowledge, Satchitananda, or being consciousness bliss, Tat, or it, Nirvana, the kingdom of God, and so on. Sri Ramana often said that the words that express its real nature most perfectly and accurately are I and am, or their combined form, I am. This is so because what these words I and am express is not only being, but also the essential self-consciousness of being. Therefore, no matter in which language these words are expressed, the first person singular pronoun I and the equivalent first person singular form of the basic verb to be am both express the whole truth as accurately as any words possibly can express it. This is why in most of the major religions of the world, the name I am is revered as the first, foremost, and ultimate name of God. The supreme sanctity of this divine name, I am, is expressed and enshrined in the Old Testament, upon which are based the three great religions of West Asian origin, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, in the words spoken by God to Moses. I am that I am. Exodus 3 verse 14, and also in the Vedas, upon which are based the broad family of South Asian religions known as Hinduism, in the Mahavakya or great saying, I am Brahman. Aradhana Aikya Upanishad 1 4:10. The fact that I and am are the original and natural names of the absolute reality of God is stated emphatically by Sri Ramana in verses 712, 713, 714, and 715 of the Guru Vachaka Kovai. When the real substance of true essence or absolute reality, which is called the heart or core itself, seemingly comes out and spreads gradually from the heart as consciousness, that is, when it seems to manifest outwardly as innumerable names and forms, which are actually just imaginary directions of the one true formless and undivided consciousness, I am, which is that real substance itself among the thousands of sacred names that are attributed to this, the being essence or absolute reality. Know that when we scrutinize, we will discover that I indeed is the first, original, and foremost. Since together with that I, which was previously in the above verse said to be the primary name of the absolute reality or God, as it's the light which is its real essence, it, am, always exists as I am in the heart of each one of us. That name am also is the primary name of the absolute reality or God. Among the many names attributed to God in all the different religions and languages of this world, which are thousandfold, no name has such real beauty or is so truly appropriate to God, who is He who knows and exists transcending, who abides in our heart devoid of thought, like the name I am. That is, I or am is the most beautiful and truly appropriate name of God, because He exists in our heart as our naturally thought-free, self-conscious being I am. Among all the names of God that are known, only the original, natural, and true name of God, which is experienced as I am I, will thunder its sole supremacy to those whose attention is selfward effacing, shining forth as the supreme word, which is absolute silence, filling the space of their heart in which their ego has been annihilated. When we turn our attention selfwards and thereby experience ourselves as we really are, our mind or ego will be annihilated, all duality will disappear, and in the thought-free space of our heart, which is the infinite space of being consciousness bliss, only our non-dual self-consciousness, I am, will remain shining clearly in all its pristine purity. Since there is nothing to disturb the perfect peace of this experience of true knowledge, and since it reveals its own absolute reality more clearly than any spoken or written words could ever, Sri Ramana describes it as the supreme word, or which is absolute silence. The power of the silent clarity of unadulterated self-consciousness to reveal itself as the absolute reality is expressed by Sri Ramana poetically in verse 5 of Ekatma Panchakam. That which always exists is only that Ekatma Vastu, the one reality or substance, which is our true self. Since the Adi Guru at the time made that Vastu to be known only by speaking, without speaking, say, who can make it known by speaking? The word Eka means one, Atma means self, and Vastu is the Sanskrit equivalent of the Tamil word Pural, which means the absolute reality, substance, or essence. Therefore, the Ekatma Vastu, which Sri Ramana declares to be Epodam Aladu, that which always is the one absolute reality or essential substance, which is our own true self. In the Kalivenba version of Ekatma Panchakam, Sri Ramana added two more words to qualify Uladu, which means that which is, namely Tanadu Uliyal, which means by its own light. Thus he declared not only that the Ekatma Vastu is the only thing that always exists, but also that it is that which always exists by its own light, that is, by its own light of non-dual self-consciousness I am. The compound word Adi Guru means the original Guru, and is a term that denotes Sri Dakshinamurti, a form of God that symbolizes the revelation of the absolute reality through silence, which is the supreme word or Paravak, and that which Sri Ramana describes poetically as speaking without speaking, that is, communicating the truth without thought or spoken words. Since the Ekatma Vastu is our own thought-free and therefore absolutely silent self-conscious being, it can only reveal itself by shining within us silently and clearly as I am I, without the obstruction of any thoughts or words. Since the silent, thought-free, peaceful, and absolutely clear experience of pure, non-dual self-conscious being I am is the true and natural state of our real self, which is the one absolute reality or essential substance that we call God, Sri Ramana says that the original and most beautifully appropriate name of God is only I am, or I am I. Though I and am are two separate words, they both denote our single, non-dual, and absolutely indivisible sense of self, our essential consciousness of our own being, our fundamental knowledge of our own existence. Each of these two words is therefore implied in the other. The pronoun I implies that we exist, and this existence of ourself is expressed by the verb am. Conversely, the word am implies the existence of nothing other than ourself, which is expressed by the pronoun I. In many languages, therefore, either of these two words can be used on its own, since its counterpart is implied in it and is therefore clearly understood. In such languages, the compound form I am is an option that is used only for added emphasis. In this respect, English is an exception. For example, if we wish to say that we are a human being, in English we have to use the both words I and am and say I am a human being, whereas in many languages it is sufficient in such a context to use either just I or just am. In Tamil, for example, we need not say the long-winded sentence Nyan Manidine Iruken, which means I am a man, because we can convey exactly the same sense by simply saying either Nan Manidan, which means I am a man, or Manidane Irukirin, which means I am a man. Similar is the case with many ancient and modern Asian and European languages such as Sanskrit, Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. In the Gospel according to St. John, which was originally written in a form of ancient Greek, there are many well-known I am sayings of Jesus, in several of which he is alluding more or less clearly to the Old Testament usage of the words I am to denote the essential, self-conscious being of God. This allusion is particularly clear in the 7 verses in which he uses I am without appending any predicate to it, and which biblical scholars therefore describe as being instances of his absolute use of I am. In each of these 7 verses, the best known of which is before Abraham was born I am, his saying ends with the Greek words ego eimi, which means I am. By using these 2 words together and by placing them at the end of each respective sentence, these verses succeed in placing great emphasis upon the meaning of I am intended by Jesus, but in some cases this emphasis has unfortunately been lost in translation. Besides these 7 instances of his absolute use of I am, there are more than 30 other sayings in which he uses I am with a predicate. But whereas in some of these sayings the words ego eimi are used in the original Greek, in others the words eimi, which means am, is used on its own without the word ego, which means I. Such a valid use of the verb am without its logical subject I is common in those languages in which all verbs take a particular form or in each of those 3 persons, in each of these 2 or more tenses. One such language is Latin, and therefore in Latin the word sum, which means am, and also the first person singular forms of other verbs can be used without the word ego or I. For example, when Descartes famously concluded cogito ergo sum, which means I think therefore I am, he did not need to use the word ego before cogito or before sum, because it is clearly implied in the grammatical form of each of these verbs. As we shall see in the next chapter, this conclusion of Descartes is really putting the cart before the horse. But I cite it here only as an example of the verb am conveying the complete sense without the explicit use of the corresponding I. In the original Hebrew in which Exodus was written, the words that are usually translated as I am that I am are Eye, Asher, Eye. The word Eye actually means just am, and the pronoun I is simply implied in it. As a more literal translation, that would be am that I am or am what am. In ancient Hebrew, there were no tenses as such, but only 2 aspects of a verb, the perfect and imperfect. The perfect aspect of a verb was used to denote an action that has been completed or ended, and was therefore equivalent in function and to the past, whereas the imperfect aspect was used to denote an action which was not yet completed or ended, and therefore was used to indicate the present or future. Since eye is the first person imperfect form of the verb to be, it implies a continuous present tense, which we would translate as am being. Thus, eshe, asher, ye could be translated as I am being what I am being, or more freely as I always am what I always am. Some biblical scholars suggest that it should be transcribed as a future tense, I shall be what I shall be, But if it is translated, thus it should be understood in the sense, I shall always be what I shall always be, or I shall always be what I always am, because it is not an exclusively future tense, but only a tense continuing into the future. However, since the essential being that is God is eternal and ever-present, Eye is most appropriately translated in this context by a continuous present tense, am or am being. Since being is in reality always present, it transcends the three divisions of time, past, present, and future. This eternally continuous nature of being is aptly expressed by the word Eye, which is an imperfect aspect of the verb to be, implying an unending and continuing state of being.